Some of you may have heard that Disney Corporation is responsible for at least one real live ghost town. Yeah. Disney built the Treasure Island.
Okay, so you remember the other, it might have been the last Spooky Sunday we watched the video about my dog went missing. That one. And it was done with this SFM animation. Yeah, well, this is one for one of the better creepypastas abandoned by Disney. So yeah, this is another one of those animations.
Resort in Baker's Bay in the Bahamas. It didn't start as a ghost town. Disney's cruise ships would actually stop at the resort, leave tourists there to relax in luxury. I mean, this is a fact. Look it up. Disney blew $30 million on the place. Yeah, $30 million.
$30 million.
And they abandoned it. Disney blamed the shallow waters, too shallow for their ships to safely operate. And there was even blame cast on the workers, saying that since they were from the Bahamas, they were too lazy to work a regular schedule. That's where the factual nature of the story ends. It wasn't because of sand, and it obviously wasn't because foreigners are lazy. Even though, I guess, both are convincing excuses. No, I sincerely doubt those reasons were legitimate. Why don't I buy the official story? Because of Mowgli's Palace. Near the beachside city of Emerald Isle in North Carolina, Disney began construction of Mowgli's Palace in the late 1990s. Well, the concept was a jungle-themed resort with a large, you guessed it, palace in the center of the whole thing. If you're unfamiliar with the character of Mowgli, then you might better remember the story, The Jungle Book. If you haven't seen it anywhere else, then you know it as the Disney cartoon from decades past. Mowgli is an abandoned child in the jungle, essentially raised by animals and simultaneously threatened/pursued by other animals, etc., etc. Mowgli's Palace was a controversial undertaking from the start. Disney bought up a ton of high-priced land from the project. And there was actually a scandal surrounding some of the purchases. The local government claimed eminent domain on people's homes. They turned around, sold the properties to Disney. At one point, a home that had just been constructed was immediately condemned with little to no explanation.
Clip my cat's nails.
And the land grabbed up by the government was supposedly for some fictional highway project. Knowing full well what was going on, people started calling it Mickey Mouse Highway. Then there was the concept art. A group of stuffed shirts from Disney Co. actually held a city meeting. They intended to sell everyone on how lucrative this project was going to be for everyone. When they showed the concept art, this gigantic Indian palace surrounded by jungle, staffed with men and women in loincloths and tribal gear, well, suffice to say, everyone flipped their shit.
Yeah.
We're talking about a large Indian palace, jungle, and loincloths, not only in the center of a relatively wealthy area, but also a somewhat xenophobic area of the southern U.S. It was a questionable mix at that point in history. One member of the crowd tried to storm the stage, but he was quickly subdued by security after he managed to break one of the presentation boards over his knee. Disney took that community and essentially broke it over its knee as well. The houses were razed. The land was cleared. There wasn't a damn thing anyone could do or say about it. Local TV and newspapers were against the resort at the beginning, but some insane connection between Disney Media's holding and the local venues came into play,
You're a bit late.
and their opinions turned on a dime. So, anyway, Treasure Island, the Bahamas. Disney sunk those millions in and then split. The same thing happened with Mowgli's Palace. Construction was complete. Visitors actually stayed at the resort. The surrounding communities were flooded with traffic and the usual annoyances associated with the influx of lost and irate tourists. Then it all just stopped. Disney shut it down. Nobody knew what the hell to think, but they were pretty happy about it. And Disney's loss was pretty hilarious and wonderful to a large group of folks who didn't want this in the first place. And I honestly didn't give the place another thought since hearing it closed over a decade ago. I live maybe 4 hours from the Emerald Isle, so really I only heard the rumbling and didn't experience any of it firsthand. Then I read this article from someone who had explored the Treasure Island Resort and posted a whole blog about all the shit he found there. Stuff just left behind. Things smashed, defaced, probably ruined by the disgruntled former employees who had lost their jobs. Hell, the locals from all around probably just had a hand in wrecking that place. People there felt just as angry about Treasure Island as folks did about Mowgli's Palace. Plus, there's rumors that Disney had released their aquarium stock into the local waters when they closed, including sharks. Who wouldn't want to take a few swings at some merchandise after that? Well, what I'm getting at is that this blog about Treasure Island got me thinking. Even though many years had passed since its closing, I figured it might be cool to do some urban exploration at Mowgli's Palace. Take some photos, write about my experience, and probably see if there's anything I could take home as a memento. I'm not gonna say I wasted no time in getting there, because honestly, it took me another year after I first found that Treasure Island article to get around to going up to Emerald Isle. Over the course of that year, I did a lot of research on the Palace Resort, I tried to. Naturally, no official Disney site or resource made any mention of the place that had been scrubbed clean. Even odder was that nobody before myself had apparently thought to blog about the place or even post a photo. None of the local TV or newspaper sites had one word about the place, though that was to be expected since they all swung Disney's way. They wouldn't be out there lauding their embarrassment, you know. Recently, I learned that corporations can actually ask Google, for example, to remove links from search results, basically for no good reason. Looking back, it's probably not that nobody's spoken of the resort, but rather their words were made inaccessible. So in the end, I could barely find the place. All I had to go on was an old as hell map that I had received in the mail back in the 90s. It was a promotional item sent out to people who had recently been to Disney World, and I guess since I had been there in the late 80s, that was recent. I didn't really intend to hang on to it. It just got shoved into my books and comics from my childhood. I'd only remembered it months into my research, and even then, it took me another few weeks to locate the storage bin my parents shoved it all into. But I did find it. Locals were no help, as most were transplants who had moved to the beach in recent years, or old residents who just sneered at me and made rude gestures the second I managed to say, "Hey." The drive took me through an inordinately large corridor of overgrowth. Tropical plants that had run rampant and overpopulated the area, mixed with the native species of flora that actually belonged there and had tried to reclaim the land. I was in awe when I reached the front gates of the resort. Tremendous, monolithic wooden gates whose supports to either side looked like they must have been cut from giant sequoias. And the gate itself had been gouged in several places by woodpeckers, eaten away at the base by burrowing insects. Hanging on the gate was a sheet of metal, some random scrap, with a hand-painted letter scrawled in black. Abandoned by Disney. Clearly, the handiwork of some local or an employee who wanted to make some small protest. The gates were open enough to walk through, but not drive. So grabbing my digital camera and the map, whose flip side showed a layout of the resort, I set off on foot. The inner grounds of the place were just as overgrown as the entryway. Palm trees stood unattended and ragged among piles of their own coconuts. Banana plants simply stood in their own stinking, bug-ridden refuse. There was this sort of clash between order and chaos, as carefully planted rows of perennial flowers mixed with obnoxious tall weeds and stinking blackened mushrooms. All that remained of any outdoor structures were broken, rotted wood and various charred bits of unidentifiable material. What was most likely an information booth or an outdoor bar was now simply a pile of assorted debris, chopped up by past vandalism and ravaged by weather. The most interesting thing on the grounds was a statue of Blue, the friendly bear from the Jungle Book, which stood in a sort of courtyard in front of the main building. He was frozen in a jovial wave towards no one, staring into empty space with a silly, toothy grin, as bird shit covered whole swaths of his fur and vines ensnared his platform. I approached the main building, the palace, only to find the outside of the building covered in graffiti where the original paint had been peeled and chipped away. And the front doors weren't just open, they had been taken off their hinges, well, were stolen. Above the front doors were the gaping maw that they had once been. Someone had once again painted "Abandoned" by Disney. The inside of the building was so stark, so bare, that I actually think people had stolen the molding off the walls. Anything that was too big to steal, counters, desks, giant fake trees, they were all resting amid this empty echo chamber. They amplified my every step like a slow rat-a-tat of a machine gun. I checked the floor plan and headed to all the locations that might seem in any way interesting. The kitchen, as you might imagine, an industrial food prep area with all the appliance and space, no expense spared. Every glass structure was broken, every door knocked off its hinges, every metal surface kicked and dented. The entire place smelled like very old piss.
Ew.
And the huge freezer, not even remotely cool now, had rot upon every empty shelf space.
Ew.
Hooks hung from the ceiling, probably for hanging cuts of meat, and as I stood inside for a moment, I noticed they were swinging. Each hooks swung in a random direction, but their movements were slow and small, that it was almost impossible to see. I figured that it must have been caused by my footsteps, so I stopped one from swinging by clutching it with my fist, and then carefully let it go. But within seconds, it started swinging once more. The bathrooms were in much the same state as the rest of the place. Just like the Treasure Island Resort, some had methodically smashed each porcelain commode with coconuts and other implements, and there was about a half-inch of rancid, stinking, stagnant water on the floor,
How often do you
so I didn't stay there for very long.
toilet at commode?
What's odd is that the toilets and the sinks and the bidets in the ladies' room, yes, I went there, all dripped, leaked, or just ran freely. I mean, it seems to me that they should have been shut off a long time ago. And there were plenty of rooms in the resort, but naturally I didn't have time to look through all of them. So the few I did peer into were similarly wrecked, and I didn't expect to find anything there. I thought there was actually a television or a radio in one room, as I really think I heard a quiet conversation coming out. Though it was like a whisper. It was probably even my own breath just echoing in silence, or just another case of the sound of flowing water playing tricks on the mind. It sounded like... I didn't believe it. I didn't know that. I didn't know that. Your father told you.
Oh my god, I do not like how the voices are going in each
I know, that that sounds ridiculous. I'm just telling you what I experienced.
Like one in my left
Why I
eye
thought
here,
there
and
might
the
have
other one
been
in
some
the right ear
running in that room, or
back. That
were
bothered
some
me.
vagrants who had
That got me.
pulled up there and probably
Did
would
not
have
like
knifed
that.
me. At the front doors of the palace again, I figured I hadn't found anything of note and had wasted the trip up. And as I looked out the door, I noticed something interesting in the courtyard that I had apparently missed. Something that would give me at least one thing to show for all my trouble, even if it was just a photograph. There was a lifelike statue of a python, maybe 8 feet long, coiled up and sunning itself on a pedestal right in the center of the area. It was almost time for the sun to start setting, so the light fell into the object in a perfect way for a photograph. I approached the python and I snapped a photo, and then I stood on my toes and snapped another. And I moved closer again to get the details of its face. Slowly, casually, the python lifted its head and looked directly into my eyes, turned so that off the pedestal, across the grass and into the trees, all 8 feet of it, its head long disappeared into the woods before its tail even left the sunning spot. Disney had released all their exotic animals onto the grounds. Right there on my floor plan was the reptile house. Oh, I should have known. I'd read about the sharks at Treasure Isle, and I should have known that they'd done this. I was dumbfounded, just utterly stupefied. My mouth must have been hanging open for the longest time before I came back down to earth and snapped it shut. I blinked a few times and backed away from where the snake had been, back towards the palace. Even though it was totally gone, I still wasn't taking any chances and backed my way into the building. I took a few deep breaths and slapped to my own face to get myself right in the head again after that. I looked for a place to sit down as my legs were feeling a bit like jelly at this point. Of course, there was no place to sit down unless I wanted to recline in the broken glass and dead leaf carpet or haul myself up onto a desk of questionable reliability. I had seen some stairs near the palace lobby and decided to go have a seat there until I felt better. The staircase was far enough away from the front of the building to be relatively clean, save for a startling accumulation of dust. I pulled the wedge of metal off the wall, once again painted with "Abandoned by Disney," that motto that I'd become accustomed to. I placed the wedge on the stairs and sat on it to keep at least somewhat clean. The stairway led downward, below ground level. Using my camera flash as a sort of improv flashlight, I could see that the staircase ended in a metal mesh door with a padlock. A sign on the door, a real sign, read, "Mascots only. Thank you." This perked up my spirits a little bit for two reasons. One, a mascots only area would definitely have something interesting. And two, the padlock was still in place. Nobody had gone down there. Not the vandals, not the looters, nobody. This was the one place I could actually explore and perhaps find something interesting to photograph or wantonly steal. I had come to the palace essentially agreeing with myself that it was okay to take anything I wanted because, hey, abandoned. It didn't take much to bust the lock. Well, actually, that's wrong. It didn't take much to bust the metal plate on the wall that the padlock was hooked to. Time and decay had done most of the work for me, and I was able to bend the metal plate enough to pull the screws out of the wall, something nobody else had apparently thought of, or hadn't been able to do at the time. The mascots only area was a startling and very welcome change from the rest of the building that I'd seen. For one, every second or third fluorescent light overhead was illuminated, even though they flickered and faded randomly. Also, nothing had been stolen or broken, even if age and exposure were definitely taking their toll. Tables had notepads and pens. There were clocks, even a punch-in clock on the wall, complete with filled-out time cards. Chairs were scattered around, and there was even a small break room with an old static-filled television and long rotted-out food and drinks on the counter. It was like one of those post-apocalyptic movies where everything is left in the state of evacuation. As I walked the maze-like sub-basement, hallways of the mascot's only area, the sights just became more and more interesting. As I went further, desks and tables were knocked over. Papers scattered, almost melded with the damp floor, and a large carpet of mold was slowly overtaking the real rotting crimson floor covering. Everything was just sort of squishy.
Ew.
Anything wood disintegrated into mush whenever I applied even the least amount of force, and clothing items hanging on hooks in one of the rooms simply fell to moist threads if I tried to unhook them. One thing that annoyed me was the light was becoming more sparse and unreliable as I went further into the dank, suffocating depths of the place. Eventually, I reached a black and yellow striped door with the words "Character Prep" stenciled in it. The door wouldn't open at first. I figured this is probably where the costumes were kept, and I definitely wanted a photograph of that twisted, stinking mess. Try as I might, whatever angle or trick I tried, the door wouldn't budge. That is, until I gave up and started to walk away. That was when there was a slight popping sound, and the door creaked open slowly.
Oh, hell no.
Inside the room was completely dark, pitch black. I used the camera flash to look for a light switch on the wall by the door, but there was nothing. As I made my search, I was jarred out of this sense of excitement by a loud electric buzz. Rows of lights overhead suddenly flashed up to life, flickering and fading in and out like the rest that I had passed. It took a second for my eyes to adjust, and it seemed like the light was going to just keep getting brighter until all the bulbs exploded. But just when I thought that it would reach that critical stage, the lights dimmed a bit and steadied. The room was exactly as I had pictured it. Various Disney costumes hung on the wall, fully put together like strange cartoon cadavers hung from invisible nooses. These were an eerie rack of loincloths and native costumes on hangers towards the back. Now, what I found odd, and what I wanted to photograph right away, was a Mickey Mouse costume at the center of the room. Unlike the other costumes, it was lying on its back in the center of the floor like a murder victim.
I know I noticed he's using all the models from the Five Nights at Treasure Island game.
The fur on the costume was rotted, shedding, creating bare patches. What was even odder, however, was the coloring of the costume.
Which makes
it was
sense,
like a photo negative of the actual Mickey Mouse. Black where he should have been white, white where he should have been black. His normal red overalls were light blue. The sight was off-putting enough that I actually put off photographing the thing until last. I took a photograph of the costumes hanging on the wall. Upward angles, downward angles, side shots to show an entire row of frozen, putrid cartoon faces, some with plastic eyes missing. And then I decided to stage a shot, just one of the bed-raggled character heads on a slick, grimy floor. I reached out for a headpiece of Donald Duck costume and carefully removed it so the thing wouldn't fall apart in my hands. And as I looked into the face of the wide-eyed, moldering head, a loud clattering sound made me jump with fright.
Geez,
I looked down at my feet. And there between my shoes was a human skull.
Time to get out of here.
It had fallen out of the mascot head and shattered into pieces at my feet. Only the empty face and lower jaw remained staring up at me. I dropped the duck head immediately, as you'd expect, and moved for the door. As I stood in the doorway, I looked back to the skull on the floor. I had to take a picture of it, you know? I mean, I had to. For any number of reasons that may seem silly, but only if you don't think it through. I'd need proof of what happened, especially if Disney was going to somehow make this go away. I had no doubt in my mind, right from the start, that even if it was just gross negligence, Disney was responsible for this. That's when Mickey, that photo-negative Mickey opposite Mickey in the middle of the floor, started to get up. First sitting up, then climbing to his feet. The Mickey Mouse costume, or whoever was inside of it, stood there at the center of the room, its fake face just staring directly at me as I mumbled, no, over and over and over, with shaking hands, a violently thrashing heart, and legs that had once again turned to jelly. I managed to lift the camera, aim it at the opposite creature, now quietly sizing me up. The digital camera screen displayed only dead pixels in the shape of the thing. It was a perfect silhouette of the Mickey costume. As the camera moved in my unsteady hands, the dead pixels spread, marring the screen wherever Mickey's outline moved to. Then the camera died. Went blank, quiet, and broken. I raised my eyes once again to the Mickey Mouse costume.
Well, now we're playing it back.
Hey! It said in a hush, perverted but perfectly executed Mickey Mouse voice. Wanna see my head come off? It started to pull at its own head, working it clumsily, glove-clad fingers around its neck and clawing impatiently, movements similar to a wounded man trying to pull himself free of a predator's jaws as it worked its digits into its neck. So much blood, so much thick, chunky, yellow blood. I turned away as I heard a sickening tearing of cloth and flesh, only cared about getting away. Above the doorway, out of this room, I saw the final message clawed into the metal with bone or fingernails. Abandoned by God. I never got the picture out of the camera. I never wrote the blog entry about it. After I ran from that place, I fled for my sanity, if not my very life. I knew why Disney didn't want anyone to know about this place.
It was scary until that part. Then that's just cliche.
They didn't want anyone like me getting in. They didn't want anyone like that getting out.
Okay, so that was SFM animation of Abandoned by Disney. Like I said, it's a really good story, pretty well written until that last part there, and then it gets a little corny. Anyways.